StraighTAllDay.com.
Tuned into the show where you learn the discipline to show up day after day, to do the work, the confidence to put yourself out there boldly and authentically, and the mental toughness to continue showing up, doing the work, putting yourself out there even when the success you've expected to achieve has yet to be achieved. And on top of all this, you get a huge dose of personal initiative, which is the go-getter energy that moves any one of us, including yourself, to go and make things happen instead of waiting for things to happen. And then we put all this together into a series of frameworks, approaches, insights, strategies, and techniques, all underneath the umbrella of one unifying philosophy that is called Work on Your Game. My name is Dre Baldwin, also known as Dre All Day, and welcome to the show. And today's topic is make executive decisions, or we may call it how to make executive decisions. We'll see what I end up calling the title, but this is around the concept of executive decisions. That's the topic here today. But before we get into this topic, let me tell everybody that I send out a text message every day for free, every morning, that will help everybody who's in my text community start their day focused, sharp, and on point. And being that this is free and being is going to do what I just told you is going to do, everybody should be getting this text message. So all you had to do to make sure you are one of those everybody who's getting this text is to text me at my number, which is 305-384-6894. And every morning when a daily motivation text message goes out, you shall be receiving that message. Just text me at that number that I just listed there. And it's listed down below in the description as well, just in case you didn't catch it. You'll be getting that message every day for free. You can even respond to that message. Might get a response back from me, because I do actually respond to some of the messages I get every single day. Secondly, Work on Your Game University. That is a place where you get to work with me directly. Anybody who's ever asked about being coached by me, you ever thought about being coached by me, you know you want to work with me. You heard me talk about things like the Bulletproof Mindset Framework, the Next Mission Framework, which is about accountability and execution, about 30 Days to Discipline, ASAP Confidence, which are very self-explanatory frameworks, the Work on Your Game, aptly named Work on Your Game system, the Business Builder Framework, system that I have a framework here called Your Body, Your Health, which is about making sure you are physically able to deliver at the same level that you want to deliver at mentally. We have all of that and more. I didn't even mention everything. We have a framework called the Content Machine process, which teaches you how to create content. If you want to use content to get your name out there for marketing purposes, selling yourself, which is getting your name out there, about putting yourself out there as the product or offer or service so that people are interested in either you as the product or whatever it is that you're offering. All of those things and more are all available as a member to you, as a member of Work on Your Game University. They're not available anywhere else, so you want to get access to that stuff, just join Work on Your Game University. We make it real easy for you. Just go to workonyourgameuniversity.com. The link to the university is down below in the description to today's episode. Let me just check. I'm just checking the podcast feed so I can see what you all are seeing, make sure that, and when I tell you that the episode is, that the link to Work on Your Game University is actually down there. Let me make sure that it actually is. Yes, it is. It is in there. Workonyourgameuniversity.com is in there, along with links to other things like Athletic Greens you heard me talk about. There will be, if there's not already, linked to get into GoPuff, which is one of our newest sponsors, and some other any new sponsors that come in the future. They'll all be in there as well. Again, that is workonyourgameuniversity.com. So let's get into today's episode, which is making executive decisions. Now, I tried to find a good definition for executive decision, being that this is a phrase and not a word. It's usually not going to be in the proper dictionary. I didn't find anything that did not reference actual executives. So when I looked this up, what I kept finding was people giving definitions about corporate executives making decisions, but that's not the context in which I'm talking about executive decisions, because I'm not corporate, not in that sense that they're talking about. That's not the spirit by which I'm talking about this. But I was able to find something good. As an executive decision is a unilateral decision, which is what I mean. The unilateral decision is an action taken by only one of the maybe multiple entities involved in a process, and it does not involve or require the agreement of others. That's an executive decision. It was exactly what I'm talking about. A decision is made by one entity amongst a group of entities, but it does not take into account, nor does it ask for, or even oftentimes does not even consider the agreement of all the other entities involved. So it's like if three of us are working together, me, you, and one other person are working together, and we're trying to come to a conclusion on something, and I just say one day, look, hey, I say to the other two people, look, this is what we're doing. And I start moving forward on it, and I don't even ask you what you think about it. that's an executive decision. That's called a unilateral decision, meaning I'm not asking you what you think. I'm not taking into account your input. We're just going to do it this way. Definition of unilateral is performed by or affecting only one person, group, or country involved in a particular situation, again, without the agreement of others. So this is only one side of an organ or structure, one side of a body. That's what unilateral means. It means just one part gets to determine what's going to happen. That's what we're talking about here today. And today's episode is about you seizing your power to do this. So understand that some of you, I understand that some of you hearing that, my description of unilateral decision, you might think, well, why would I ever want to do that, Dre? Wouldn't it piss off some of the other people involved when they feel like they are being disregarded, when they feel like their input is not being considered? Might they get mad at me because I'm just making a decision without taking into effect or taking into account what they think or what it is that they have to say? And the answer is possibly. However, and I'll add on to that, let me not even say however, let me say and. There are times when you need to make decisions like this because, and today's point, I'm going to explain why and when you might need to make these kind of decisions, because everything in life is not going to be, we need to get consensus before we move forward. And I'll explain to you why. Point number one, today's topic, once again, is making executive decisions. First point, remember that there are no group decisions. Episode number 2449, I explained to you that group decision is an oxymoron. There are no such thing. There's no such animal as a group decision. Now, there is group agreement, but group agreement only happens when somebody makes a decision and they get the group to agree on it. You can sell the group on a decision that has been made, but a group cannot make a decision. Anytime you hear someone say that the group made a decision, here's what really happened. All right, they're softening up what actually happened. What actually happened is one person made a decision, and then they got the rest of the group to agree with that decision. But the group itself cannot come to a decision all together. That doesn't happen. All right, two people are in a relationship, they decide to break up. There's no mutual breakup. There's no such thing as a mutual breakup. A mutual breakup, what it actually is one person decided they wanted to break up, and then they basically got the other person to agree with them. You know what? Yeah, we should break up. And then they called it a mutual breakup so that everybody could save face. But there's no such thing. There is group agreement. There is not group decision. You as the executive decision maker makes a decision, then you sell or persuade everyone else on the decision that you have made, or you don't have to sell anyone on it. You just do whatever it is that you want to do and allow everybody else to adjust as necessary. All right, that is what group decision is about. And I'm writing something right now on Twitter because I said something there that I think would be a good tweet. So I'm about to post this on Twitter while I'm recording this to y'all. So give me 1 second while I write this. And what I just said, that there is no group, there is group, I'm trying to remember what I said. There is group agreement, but there is no group decision. All right, so since I already did the episode on group decision, I know I've talked about this on Twitter before, but since I'm thinking about it right now, I'm posting it. So there, I just did it. All right, so anyway, back to what I'm talking about here. So you can make an executive decision as on your own and then sell everybody else on it, or you can say, well, I don't have to sell you on it. This is just what's happening. So any of you, depending on how you were raised, you may have had a parent who did this. They would make executive decisions and say, this is what's happening. This is what you have to do. I'm not asking you what you think about it. I'm just telling you this is what it's going to be. And you really didn't have any recourse to push back against it. Again, depending on how you were raised and what the temperature was in that home that you were in. They didn't have to sell you on it. They just told you what it was, and you just had to make your adjustments to the decision that was made that was over your head or above your pay grade, as they said. When you're making executive decisions, you are not making decisions with a group of people, hoping that you can get everyone on the same page. All right, this doesn't really work anyway, even though people try to pretend like that's what's happening. And you'll notice that sometimes when someone is in a strong position of power, but they're in a very politicized environment, they will make a show of a decision being a group decision when it's really not a group decision. They will try to make the show and make it seem like everybody's coming to a consensus on something when everyone in the group actually knows what it really is, because they all know they don't have the power to veto any decision made by a certain individual. That person has all the power. And when people try to pretend, and even when people do try to pretend that there's a real group decision happening and it's really not, what you end up getting is worse than that. Is what you get is groupthink. And what groupthink is when everybody's trying to compromise and get along with each other, what happens is nobody's really thinking, nobody's offering their real opinion, and then you usually get less than ideal outcomes when you have groupthink. That's what happens sometimes when everybody's just trying to get along, and I've seen this happen many times. Like group projects, when you're working in school, for example, you have group projects. Nobody wants to assert themselves as being above anybody else, and nobody really is. So then you get groupthink, and you probably get less than ideal results from everybody and for everybody. And then you have situations where one person really does have all the power, but they want to make a show of involving everyone else. So everyone is pretty much just going along with whatever the main person wants, or saying what they think the main person wants to hear. This would be a situation like if you're working in a corporate environment and there's a supervisor who clearly has more power than everybody else in the room, but they try to make it seem like they're involving everybody in the decision process when they're really not. They are, but they're not, and everyone's kind of just trying to gauge what should I say that's going to make the boss happy, and this is what you end up getting. You get this pretend show, and there are some people who are okay with this. They can go along with this for years, and they're fine with it because they understand the game that they're in. And there are other people who can't stomach it, they don't like it, and they end up getting out of that environment because they're like, I don't like having to pretend to be fake in order to hold down my job. A good example of this is, remember I was watching The Sopranos, the HBO TV show that was out years ago, a great show. And this was back when I used to watch TV. And Tony Soprano was the head mafia guy in this fictional TV show. And Tony would tell a joke, and everybody in the crew would laugh at Tony's jokes. But the reason they laughed at his jokes, his wife pointed out this to him once. Carmela Soprano pointed out to Tony once, the only reason they laugh at your dumb jokes is not because you're actually funny, it's because you're the boss. They got to pretend to laugh at your jokes. Is that they don't laugh at your jokes, then you're going to notice that, and it may hurt them politically within the realm of the mafia to not laugh at the boss's jokes. So they don't really think you're funny, they're just laughing because you're the boss. And it was the first time Tony had actually realized it, and then they showed a scene where he was like looking back at some dumb joke he told, and how everybody was laughing hysterically at a joke that wasn't even that funny. And he was realizing, damn, she was right. She was pointing this out. And this is what happens a lot of times in groups. Either people are pretending to go along with the main person because the main person is the main person. They're just trying to survive politically. Or you get everybody trying to pretend to go along with each other because nobody wants to seem like an outsider to the group. And then nobody's giving their best. Nobody's giving their best, which may go against the grain of what the group is doing. And then you end up getting subpar results. So this is why executive decisions are necessary oftentimes, and there needs to be a clear hierarchy. Now, remember that every organization, folks, must have a boss. Every car has one steering wheel. Everybody else is a passenger in the vehicle. Every organization must have a boss. You can either be a passenger or you can be the driver, but you need to pick a role. All right, two people can't drive the car at the same time. And what happens in any organization when you get groupthink is because nobody wants to step up and make a decision. Everybody compromises, again, trying to maintain harmony, which they may successfully do, but you don't get ideal results. Sometimes maintaining harmony is not what a group needs. The group needs somebody to step up and make the best decision for the group, which is not about harmony, it's about outcomes. All right, and sometimes you have to give up a little bit of harmony to get the ideal outcome, or you give a little bit of outcome to maintain harmony. But usually you can't get both at the same time, at least not at ideal levels. Point number 2. Today's topic, once again, is making executive decisions. How, when, and why to make executive decisions. Number 2, ownership, responsibility, and power are a package deal. 3 things. Ownership, responsibility, and power are a package deal. If you want any one of these 3, you got to take on the other 2. You want power, you got to take ownership, you got to take responsibility. You want ownership, you get power, you get responsibility. You want responsibility, you get power, you get ownership. Now, you might be wondering, well, why is that such a bad thing? Well, it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just that it comes as there's a cost to it. There's a cost to all of these things. Power comes at a cost. If you want power over your life, guess what the cost is? You got to take responsibility. And with that responsibility comes ownership. When you have ownership, there's a cost to ownership. For example, if you live in a place that you rent, the place that you live is a place that you rent. Anytime something goes wrong, you can make a phone call to the main office or maintenance or whoever, and they come and fix the situation. But if you're the owner, there's nobody to call to come fix it. You got to fix it. It's your responsibility. See that word responsibility comes right there. So it's not that either one of them is better than the other. It's just a matter of which trade-off do you want to make, because there are no perfect scenarios in life. There are only trade-offs. I talked about that in, let me tell you what episode that was where I talked about trade-offs. In case you didn't hear it, that was episode number 2174. There are no perfect scenarios, only trade-offs. At some point in life, you have to make decisions that are about what you want, not about what anybody else wants. If you want to make executive decisions. Now, if you want to not ever make executive decisions, you want to be at the whim of someone else's decisions, then you never have to worry about this. But I'm assuming that those of you who listen to this show, you are either in or you plan on being in a leadership position. This is what it's going to take. And then you have to live with the results of those decisions that you made, because you're the one making the decision. You're the executive. You're in charge. So if it goes good, great. You get all the credit. If it goes terrible, you get all the blame. This is the trade-off. This is how it works. And then you have to live, again, with the results of the choices that you made. And once you start making executive decisions, you're responsible for all of them. You're responsible for everything that happens from that point hence. That's one of the hard parts of it. It's one of the reasons why many people never step into leadership positions. It's one of the reasons many people never make executive decisions, why many people end up riding in the passenger seat their entire lives, because they don't want to step into a position of leadership, not because they don't want to lead, but because they don't want everything that comes with leading. What comes with leading is responsibility and ownership and power. And a lot of people don't want it, even though they say they want it, because they realize that there's a trade-off that comes with it. Again, there are no perfect scenarios, folks, only trade-offs. So if you want to lead, you have to take on all of this other baggage that comes with it. All right. And when you have power, you have influence over what happens, which is good. Most people want that, right? But then you got to take ownership of everything that happens after that. All right. See, as the executive decision maker, you have the most power over a circumstance, which is a good thing. Most people want that, right? At least they say they do. This allows you to have ownership, which gives you first and final say over what happens moving forward. Most people want that, but this is a responsibility. All right. Now you got the burden on your shoulders. See, this is the difference between being the owner of a business and someone who works at a business. See, when you work at a business, you clock in and you clock out. When it's over, you just go home. All right, your check is your check, regardless of what's happening with the business overall. But when you're the owner of the business, there's really no clocking in and clocking out. All right, you don't have a time clock when you're the owner of the business, because you ain't getting paid for your time. You're getting paid for the results. And you are responsible for everything that happens there. Even if it's not you that did it, you're still responsible for it because it's your business. So any of you who's looking at becoming an entrepreneur, but you're not quite there yet, all right, this is the trade-off that comes with it, or this is one of the trade-offs that comes with it. Again, while having that ownership, having power, having leadership, these sound good. Most people are able to make the unconscious calculation that, hey, damn, I'm going to be responsible too. And this is why many people never step into a position of power in life, because they can see what's on the other side of it. They don't want those trade-offs that come with it. But understand that in life, folks, as I already told you, there are no perfect scenarios. So you're not going to have a perfect outcome no matter what you do. So if you decide not to make executive decisions, you will never want to be in a leadership position. There's a trade-off that comes with that too, all right? Because you have no power, you have no ownership. That comes with not having responsibility, which is usually people like not having responsibility because you don't have the burdens on you. And that's usually less anxiety and less stress, generally speaking. But you don't have no power. You don't have any ownership. And it is that you don't have say in what's actually happening to you or what's happening in your own life. You don't have as much say as you could have if you don't take the ownership. So the question is, which trade-off do you want to make? And if you don't choose one, then one will be made for you. All right, this is why taking ownership and responsibility is such a big deal, because if you don't make the decision, someone's going to make the decision for you. And I would bet most of you as adults don't want someone else making decisions for you in your own life. You want to be making the decisions. Point number 3. Today's topic, once again, is making executive decisions. How, why, and when. Remember that most people are ambivalent and do not really want the responsibility that they talk about. All right, I know this to be true because as a business coach, as a person who works in personal development, I talk to people all the time. I talk to people at different levels from different areas of life, people who do anything you could possibly name that someone could do for a living. I've talked to someone who does it. And a lot of people talk about wanting responsibility and power and ownership. But when it comes time to actually do the things that would get those things for them, they don't want to take the steps. Most people would rather follow someone who will make the decisions for them rather than be the person who actually makes the decisions. So I am nominating, as of this episode, I'm nominating you to be that individual. I'm nominating you to be the decision maker in your life, the main decision maker in what you do, at least career-wise. Maybe you won't be the decision maker at home, but in what you do with your career and your life, I'm nominating you to be the number one decision maker. There is power and control that come with that, and I'm wagering that most listeners of this show want to have power and control in your own life, even though you have to pay for that power and control in the form of responsibility. You're willing to make that payment by taking on responsibility. Maybe you feel you're not quite ready to step into that role of responsibility, ownership, and power. That's fine. Not everybody is at all times. That's why this show exists. The reason this show exists, the reason Work on Your Game University exists, is to help prepare you and groom you for that position, to step into that position. And you understand that you don't need to be 100% quote unquote ready for the position before you step into it. Because if you wait to be 100% ready to do anything, you'll never do anything. Or we can say everything. If you wait to be 100% ready to do everything, you will never do anything. And I'm speaking directly to some of you right now, because some of you know what you want to do, but you haven't gotten started on it because you feel like you are not quote unquote ready to do it yet. Well, understand you're never going to be ready until you actually start doing it. And the longer you keep delaying with the lame excuse / reason / story that you need to get ready first before you begin, more years are going to go by, and before you know it, your energy to actually do it is going to be gone, and then you're going to become a bitter old man or woman talking about what you could have done, or thinking about what you could have done. You won't even want to talk about it because it'll embarrass you to discuss it, because somebody's going to bring up the question, well, why didn't you do it? So you won't talk about it anymore. You'll just be thinking about it, why you never did anything, because you were waiting to get ready. All right, you will never be 100% ready to do anything before you start. Okay, this is why being a member of Work on Your Game University will help you to make sure you can not only assume power, because power is assumed. It is not some absolute thing. Nobody crowns you with power. All right, you assume power. You step into a role of power even before you're ready for it, and then you make yourself ready for it. But in Work on Your Game University, we're going to make sure that you not only can step into a role of power, but also you're able to maintain and expand it and control your power. You're able to, there's a word that's escaping me right now, but you take control over your power, and you're able to consolidate your power to make sure that it stays stable where it's at. With all that said, let's recap today's class, which is make executive decisions. How, when, and why. Definition of executive decision is really about making unilateral decisions. In other words, you make choices that you don't need anybody else's, you don't need, want, or look for anybody else's agreement with it. It's just a decision that you make, and whoever else is involved has no choice but to follow it. And again, this is an assumed power position. It's not something that somebody hands you. Nobody hands you power. You take it. Number one, remember that there are no group decisions. There is group agreement, but there is no group decision. So you have to decide, do you want to sacrifice some harmony for the outcome, or do you want to sacrifice the outcome for the harmony? Point number two, ownership, responsibility, and power are a package deal. You want one, you must take on the other two. This is not an option. This is not a choice. This is something that absolutely happens every single time. Look at anybody who has any one of those things. I guarantee you they have the other two. So as the executive decision maker, you have the most power over a circumstance. What sounds good, the trade-off of it is that you also have all the responsibility for whatever happens, whether it goes good or it goes bad. Number three, remember that most people are ambivalent and do not really want the responsibility that they talk about, even though they talk about wanting responsibility. Most people would rather follow somebody who will make the decisions for them so that they don't have to have the ownership and the responsibility that comes with it. If you are really wanting to have responsibility in life, understand that you cannot wait until you're 100% ready, because you'll never be 100% ready. All right, so what you need to do is get into something like Work on Your Game University, which I talk to you about all the time, so you can not only assume a position of power, but maintain, expand it, and consolidate that power so that you can stay stable and you can maintain your presence of mind, even though things are not always going to go good when you're in a position of power. All right, heavy is the head that wears the crown, as we say. So with all that said, text me, let me know the best idea you got from today's class. What are you going to do different or think different based on what you heard? My number is 305-384-6894. Secondly, Work on Your Game University. That is the place where I will help you, get you ready to step into a position of leadership, help you step into a position of leadership, even if you're not ready for it yet, because nobody's ready to be a leader when they first step into it. You have to step into it anyway, which is the main thing that slows a lot of people down. Well, I got to be 100% ready before I start. No, you'll never start anything if that's what you need. Get into Work on Your Game University so we can help you get the mindset in place, have the strategy, which is your plan of action, the system, so you can operate consistently, and the accountability and execution so that you're always getting things done the way you need to get done. All of that's happening at workonyourgameuniversity.com. Again, workonyourgameuniversity.com. Work on your game. Dre all day.